A departure and a variance are two different mechanisms by which a federal court may impose a sentence outside the recommended range under the United States sentencing guidelines. While both result in a sentence that deviates from the guidelines range, they are based on different legal principles and considerations. A departure is a sentencing adjustment based on specific factors outlined in the guidelines manual that warrant a sentence above or below the recommended range. Judges must provide a rationale for the departure that refers to the applicable provision in the guidelines manual. Some departures contained within the sentencing guidelines manual include substantial assistance, acceptance of responsibility, criminal history, aberrant behavior, victim conduct, and extreme vulnerability. Substantial assistance warrants a departure whenever the defendant has provided valuable information useful in the prosecution of others. However, the government has the exclusive control over assessing the value of the information provided to justify filing a motion for downward departures based upon cooperation. Many plea agreements allow for the government to move for an additional level for the timely acceptance of responsibility provided the offender's offense level reaches a minimal threshold. This provision is a reward for offenders who timely accept responsibility for their actions, preventing the needless expenditure of time and money by the government to prepare for trial. An upward or downward departure may be imposed if the defendant's criminal history category overrepresents or underrepresents the seriousness of their criminal history or the likelihood of recidivism. Sometimes courts will consider convictions that are either too old to be counted as criminal history points when imposing an upward departure. Conversely, if the accused has a string of similarly related but minor convictions that unfairly provide a high criminal history score, the court may impose a downward departure. A downward departure for a single criminal occurrence or a single criminal transaction that was committed without significant planning and represents a marked deviation from the defendant's otherwise law-abiding life. This is considered a departure for aberrant behavior. A downward departure if the victim's wrongful conduct significantly contributed to provoking the offense behavior. This is common in federal homicide cases when the defendant's actions may not justify self-defense. Extreme vulnerability of the victim. An upward departure if the vulnerability of the victim is unusually pronounced and not fully accounted for in the guidelines. A variance is a sentence that falls outside the recommended guidelines range based on the court's consideration of the factors set forth in 18 U.S.C. section 3553A. Unlike departures, variances are not based on specific provisions within the guidelines manual. Instead, they rely on the broader sentencing factors outlined in section 3553A, such as the nature and circumstances of the offense, the history and characteristics of the defendant, the need for deterrence and protection of the public, and the need to provide restitution to victims. Common variances used at federal sentencing may include cooperation or assistance not meeting the substantial assistance standard, a downward variance for defendants who have provided some assistance to authorities but do not qualify for a substantial assistance departure under section 5K1.1. Extraordinary family circumstances, a downward variance for defendants who have exceptional family responsibilities or dependents, such as minor children or ailing family members who rely on the defendant for care and support. Rehabilitation and remorse, a downward variance for defendants who demonstrate genuine remorse for their actions and have made significant efforts towards rehabilitation. Mental health or addiction issues, a downward variance for defendants with significant mental health or addiction issues that contributed to their criminal conduct and require treatment. In summary, departures and variances are two mechanisms by which a court may impose a sentence outside the guidelines range. Departures are based on specific provisions within the U.S.C., while variances rely on broader sentencing factors under 18 U.S.C. section 3553A. The list of departures and variances provided here is not exhaustive, as there are numerous other factors and provisions that may be considered during sentencing.